The last video explained what physics is, just in terms of the most basic umbrella definition of physics. But let's ask a different question now. Let's ask the question of, how does physics work? What is it that physicists do from day to day? Well, it's important to understand that physics is a process. Right? And what is the goal of that process? What is the goal of what physicists are trying to achieve? Well, at its most basic level, physics is trying to explain how the universe works and allow people to predict how a certain set of circumstances will transpire if we know something about how that circumstance begins. Right? And so what this boils down to is the process of how physics is implemented is it's a combination of experiment and theory. All right, so just a quick example of how this might work is, just say you were trying to explain something that you can observe in the universe. Let's just do a really basic example of this and just say you're just going to take a ball and throw it from one point of space to the other. Okay, so that could be the first part of your experiment. And if you're carrying out the process of physics, well, you would want to know how to explain that behavior, because the universe is going to do whatever the universe decides is going to happen, right? It doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about your theory. But what you're going to do is just go and try to describe the motion that you observed by just making up some equation that might describe some behavior of what you see. So you might end up with just something to begin with. You can just say you have an equation, A equals B multiplied by C. And then you say, okay, well, if I go back and carry this experiment out again, boom, does my equation accurately predict where the ball is going to land? Well, it either does or it doesn't. If it does, then maybe your equation is correct. If it's wrong, maybe you go back and modify your equation a little bit. A equals B multiplied by C plus D. And then you just go back and iterate the process again, carry out the experiment again. Were you able to predict what was going to happen using your equation? Well, if not, maybe it's actually D divided by E. That's the actual description of how the universe works. And so this is what physics is. It's just this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth between experiment and theory until we get an explanation where we think our theory accurately describes what the universe does in a given circumstance. And maybe that's accurate, maybe it's not. And we're never 100% sure. So who is it that actually carries out this process? Well, sometimes it's an individual person, sometimes it's a student in a physics lab, sometimes it's thousands of people in giant scientific consortiums. Sometimes it's astronomers at telescopes. There's just a lot of different ways that this process takes form, right? But it's always some basic back and forth between these two concepts. And that's the process of how physics is carried out.